All right, Victorum Gaming fans, we're back with another SPQR video, another faction review. We're taking a look at Persia today, and this is a really great faction to think about playing. So, as usual, we get a little bit of history, a little bit of background, and then we jump right into the list as we tend to do here. So, Persia offers a great sort of counterpoint, obviously, to any of the Greek lists, specifically Sparta, too. Especially if you, again, like the history behind that time period all the way up through Alexander. And so the list does present a lot of great tactical options, but also from a collecting standpoint, modeling, painting, all that stuff, there's just a lot of characterful things here. So we start off with the hero clocking in at 50 denarii, and there's no, basically, there's no special army special rule or anything, but anyway, moving back to the hero. So pretty standard range +1, 2 melee dice, however 2 agility +3 on the bravery to start with, and no armor and 2 wounds. So it's a little bit different than the normal there, and that's actually pretty interesting. So so if you're playing like in a campaign and stuff like that, and you start off with your talents, considering the really good agility and bravery already, that already unlocks a lot of talents that you otherwise might have to bump up a little bit. So you can actually focus more on your melee dice and melee just to get those stats up really quick, or if you want to switch over to range a little bit too. On the option side, fairly standard across the board here, though we get some other options that we haven't seen much of yet. So you got difference between small shields and large shields. You get scale armor, really cool. Cuirass if you want to go heavy, helmet if you just want to go very, very light on the armor. And then on the weapon side, you have anything from short spears, typical sword and bow, up to buying some javelins, and then you have the typical option of also mounting your guy, and then only for 30 denarii there. So again, pretty decent size, or just decent variety of things here. Not as great as some of the other factions we've seen, but again, more than enough options here to build just about anything you need to for your list. So definitely some really cool options there, and then the hero will really probably need to be geared more depending on what kind of unit or units he's going to be around. So Persians do have a good selection of unit types. So starting off with kind of like the elite unit, you get the sort of infamous Immortals, and so they clock in at 16 denarii base here. Range +1, melee +2, 2 melee dice, kind of standard. Again, Persian's really good on just the agility and bravery here as sort of base stats, so that's actually pretty well buffed up. And then armor +2 because they come with a scale armor, and you get a whole lot of equipment with these guys too. So this is like really generous for 16 denarii. A bow, scale armor, short spear, small shield, and sword. You can change the small shields to large if you want to go that route for a little bit extra parry action. You can buy a standard and a horn as typical, and that's it on the option. So really more geared towards close combat, but the fact that they do have a bow option is really cool. And when we get to the special characters, we'll actually come back to that and talk about that some more. And then they have a single special rule. So it's called Put to the Test. This is more for campaign play, basically. But at the end of a battle, after all casualties have been determined, any mortals that have been permanently killed will be automatically replaced by any surviving levies in the warband on a one-for-one basis. This may not take the Immortals unit above its original size at the start of the previous battle. So really cool ability there, kind of in line with sort of the history behind the Immortals unit. So really solid unit. This is basically the Persian elite unit. It would have been nice maybe for more denarii, just if they had been like ranged +2 on top of everything else, but it'd be a really good unit. As is, you're still getting a hell of a lot for 16 denarii apiece, and really it's not too much to think about upgrading them to large shields. So and still only 18 denarii. And then armor wise, they're not as heavily armored as, like, let's say a Roman legionary unit or something like that, but they can hang with a lot of other units. So that's basically your main, or one of your main units. Then on the cavalry side, basically just generic cavalryman. Range 1, melee 2, melee dice 2, no agility, but solid bravery to start with there, and some armor. And literally the only equipment is a horse. And here you really have like a toolbox cavalry unit. So do you want to go light and harassing, a little bit more combat, some range, up through medium, and even honestly really heavy cavalry, and you do have a really cool option for other mounts here too. So again, horses all you get, and then you basically get to pick and choose. So you can go Linothorax and kind of get up to medium level for armor, which is still really cheap. Cuirass if you want to go pretty heavy. Again, it's not going to affect your speed. Only barding does that. And then you got other options here. So small shields, barding again if you want to go really ridiculously heavy and kind of almost get into that cataphract territory. But again, that will slow your speed. Long spears if you want that really awesome punch on the charge. Swords for that extra parry and sort of durability. Bows if you really want to go that route. But again, probably want to stick to maybe a little bit less armor if you're going that route. Would be kind of weird to have like a cataphract type armor with ranged ability. It's a whole lot of points for maybe not so much offensive punch with, again, only range 1. You could also buy these guys javelins. So again, you could really build up a really interesting ranged unit with these guys, maybe bows and javelins. That way you can actually do more stuff once the javelins are gone. And then the other cool option, you can replace the horses with camels for free. So again, really just diversifying the type of mount that you have there. And again, we'll cover equipment, mounts, all that fun stuff in other videos. And then you do have the typical options of a horn and standard there. So again, really wide variety. You can build this cavalry unit to do just about anything you need to. And then we come to the last, basically like regular unit that the Persians get. So you got 3 kind of standard units here, and that's what they call levies. So basically your typical fighting unit, basically. They clock in at only 5 denarii, super cheap. Range 1, melee 1, 1 dice, only 1 bravery, and then they come with either a short spear or sword, so either one but not both. And then you do have some other options for upgrades here. So a little bit of armor in the helmet, and again, it's only 7 denarii total there. But really, what's generally 1 armor is not going to do you much here. The Spara for 5, which we'll read in just a minute here below. Small shields, bows. You can definitely build up kind of a horde, massive like range unit here, where the quantity will make up for their lack of skill. So, I mean, really, a unit of 20 bowmen is only 100 points, and in a larger game, you could field several blocks of that. And, really, just through weight of numbers, be actually pretty dang scary. And then we have some other options. So you can take these guys from basically just very weak and untrained up through kind of getting a little bit better. So if you're going into combat, you could spend the extra points, 3 denarii each, to go melee +2. Now again, they only have 1 dice, but melee +2 is you're at least going to get some hits in, just not so much on the quantity side. And then alternately, you can increase their range +2. So we haven't really seen this kind of like customization anywhere else yet, by and large. So again, you can kind of transform this unit from just cheap cannon fodder up through a little bit more specialized here. But range +2 for only 3 denarii each. So if you give them a bow and that, basically 10 denarii for a range +2 unit with bows. And again, only 10 of them for 100 points. That's still really cheap. 200 points for a big old unit of 20. You could certainly buff out your ranged ability with this levy unit and really be quite effective there. Range +2 is no joke. And then you have an option for a standard, which probably you won't really need unless maybe you're going more combat side. But a horn certainly should be considered, just because being able to fire 3 bow shots in a turn would be pretty scary with a large unit. You can definitely kind of like to take something from 300 there. Your arrows will block out the sky. So really cool unit. So then the Spara, which again we saw that as an upgrade. So Sparas were large wicker shields that levies often carry to create temporary strong points on the battlefield. They're treated as large shields, but if the unit is not involved in close combat and performs 2 consecutive special actions, the Spara can instead be used to make basically a makeshift barricade. The unit will benefit from heavy cover against all ranged attacks, and as being in cover from from enemies moving into close combat. These benefits are lost as soon as the levy unit moves or after the first round of combat. So again, you could get a large unit of these guys together and sort of set up strong points at key places on the battlefield or camp objectives and make the enemy remove you. And again, with all the other things you have, these guys can sit on the objectives because they're relatively cheap, and then you can let your immortals and cavalry go do the main killing. So really cool ability. So if you're going more on the combat side, something to certainly consider. And it's interesting the way this reads here. If I'm not mistaken, right, the benefits are lost as soon as the unit moves or after the first round of close combat. So a weird build here could be buying the Sparas and going all in on the range and basically creating a forward base for like your big archer unit where they're in basically heavy cover. You're not moving and you're not necessarily fighting around a close combat. So you could set up on an objective and then just spam missile fire. So if that's how that indeed works, then that is actually really cool. So another maybe not so obvious use of the levies there. Moving on. The Persians get the war elephant, just like we saw with the Macedonians, so we're not going to go into the full spiel on those again. So if you want all the sort of commentary on the war elephant, do check out our Macedonia video. So it's about halfway through that video. War elephant definitely has its uses, and upgrading on the turret is a really cool option there. So, but certainly just for bigger games. All right. Moving on, Persian Empire mercenary list. So kind of as befitting this large empire that they had. Obviously, you can take yourself as mercenaries, and then they have a really solid selection too on the sort of named mercenary units. So you get Cretan archers, will really just cream of the crop of that. Mercenary hoplites, again, pretty solid. We'll cover that in the other video on mercenaries. Parthian horse archers, if you want really some ranged, really awesome ranged mounted shenanigans there. And Thessalian cavalry are also really great. So, but again, we'll cover that when we cover mercenaries. And then we get on to the special characters. So we do get 3 of them with the Persians, so really some cool ones here. So we get Darius, King of Kings. Now, not to be confused with Darius the First during the time of the sort of first Greek invasion of Greece. This is the Darius that Alexander fought. So clocks in at 190 denarii. Only range 1, melee 3, 5 melee dice though. Agility's -1, we'll see why. Bravery's 4, armor's 3, and 10 wounds. He's got blessed at birth, buckle of the line, die hard, divine luck ×2 in motivation. He comes with horses and a sword. Basically, he's mounted on a chariot. So he's got 3 abilities. The chariot of Darius is not designed as a battle platform as those of other heroes. Brawling with a common soldier is far beneath the King of Kings. However, Darius is not above smashing through the enemy units and grinding their heroes under the wheels of his chariot. When he performs a melee action, he has the melee and melee dice characteristics shown above. However, if an enemy unit performs a melee action against him, he's only melee 0 and melee dice 1. So at the right time, having him basically charge in and do some work with his chariot can be pretty good. He's also got King of Kings, so he's just short of being an actual god, and the countenance of divine powers smile upon his every endeavor. So long as he's on the battlefield, he may reroll the result of his dice of fate. So basically, you should be choosing like when you're going first, really, pretty much all game. That reroll is really cool, and then you have basically between that and then you can save your divine luck for other things. That's really strong. And then last, the will of Darius. The people of the Persian Empire love their King of Kings, and if they don't, they certainly fear him. All units within 12 and in line of sight may use his bravery score for will to fight checks. And again, at +4, that's actually pretty good. You don't always think of the Persians as really like strong leadership, but as we've kind of seen, their bravery scores are pretty good across the board here, except for the levies. So really, this is more of an ability to keep his levies in check. However, double the number of any that flee from battle as retribution is taken upon the unit for their cowardice under the gaze of their King of Kings. So really cool stuff there. And then running through his talents real quick, blessed at birth, basically, even though that's more of a campaign ability for level 1 heroes, again, if you apply, I guess, the effect of it when you're actually using him for a game, you basically get to bump one of his stats by a 1. Buckle the line. Basically, an enemy must pass a bravery check or be at -1 melee, and basically he that would also nullify phalanx or the benefits of phalanx for an enemy for a phase. So, so really good at dealing with basically the Greeks. Die hard, so he has the ability to come back with when he hits 0 wounds, he has a chance to come back with 1 wound. So very godlike of him. Divine luck ×2 basically gets to reroll 2 dice in the game, and motivation. So basically minions, a minion unit. So a non-hero unit basically within 12 of him will have the ability to do 3 actions instead of the normal 2 if it hasn't already activated yet. So a really cool special ability. So to basically get more value out of some of your units. So if you don't have the ability to buy a horn for all your units if they're close, he can essentially act like a pseudo horn that can be reused. Then we move on to Datis, or Datis, however you want to pronounce him. Really cool hero. I wish there were a couple more of this type of hero in the game, but hopefully with some expansions. And basically he can stand on his own, but he's really there to like enhance an immortal unit. So I wish there were some more heroes that kind of buffed a certain type of unit like this specifically. So 125 denarii gets you a little bit less movement. He's wearing a cuirass. Ranged 1, melee 2, 3 dice. Agility 2, bravery, super good at +4, armor's +3, and he only has 4 wounds, but he is a low-level hero. He's got battlefield control, loyal bodyguard, motivation, shield bash, and voice of command. And then he comes with a cuirass, a small shield, and a sword. And basically, you're buying him more for his ability here. So if he leads a unit of immortals, they reroll all ranged and melee attacks. So really, again, we saw the mortals come with bows and I think swords it was. So it just doubles the effectiveness. And let me actually double check that. Yeah, small or short spears and swords. So like if you have the points and you're playing a big enough game and you're running immortals, you just have to get this guy. Again, a free reroll to all ranged and melee attacks is just stupid good. You're basically just doubling the effectiveness of your mortal unit. So, and he's no slouch either. Again, he's a little bit on the lower end for a hero, but heavy armor, which you don't always think of for the Persians. So, battlefield control, basically, there's a lot to it, but long and short of it is basically you don't have to take will to fight checks with your army if you don't want to. Loyal bodyguard, basically another hero of equal or lower level, so basically a generic hero because Darius is certainly higher. Basically acts as your bodyguard as long as they're within an inch of you, and basically they can soak up all the damage. So if you can build a hero that is geared towards just surviving and pair that with him, Datis is not going to die. As long as that hero's alive, they'll just suck up all the damage. Meanwhile, he can get busy helping out and just making those immortals better, which should ultimately help you win the fight. Next up, he's got motivation, just like Darius. So again, a unit within 12, if it hasn't activated yet, can get 3 actions. So basically, he can give it to his own unit of immortals, and again, three melee actions or 3 bow actions with a unit of immortals, with them being able to reroll all their ranged melee is stupid good. He's got shield bash, which is interesting there. So basically he has a chance to damage with his shield and then potentially cause a knockdown as well. And it's got the smasher rule, so it's not going to get parried. And then obviously once the opponent's down, it's much easier to deal with him. Beyond that, he's got voice of command, so basically a friendly unit within 6 of him gets +1 bravery, so a little buff there. So beyond that, he doesn't really have anything else that's crazy for close combat. He's not going to stand up to some of the beefier melee-oriented heroes, but he is there to basically enhance your immortal unit and take them from really good to frankly just great. So really worth considering him, especially very thematic upgrade. And then last but not least, but wait, there's more. We get honestly probably in my like top 3 heroes for the whole game right now. Just one of the coolest heroes. Sadly, Warlord doesn't have a model for her yet, but hopefully coming soon. And that's Artemisia. So a massive 225 denarii, and she is worth every penny. So range +2, melee +3, 3 melee dice, 3 agility, 4 bravery. Armor is only +1, and that's really her only weak point. 6 wounds, and really we should be putting like a little asterisk next to the melee dice because of her special abilities. Talents, she has a whole load of them. Divine Luck, Eye of the Hawk, Heroic Rush, Inspire, Lethal Blade, Precision Shot, Rain of Blades, Storm of Blades, Wall of Iron, and then she comes with a bow, only leather armor, and 2 swords. And so that armor +1 is definitely, like, if she's actually going to be having to take an armor save, she's probably going to be taking a wound, but with everything else she has, it's hopeful that she really doesn't have to get to that point. So she has a really colorful special rule called Emasculator. So for every male hero within 12, friend or foe, she gains a bonus melee dice. In addition, all male heroes within 12, again friend or foe, lose 1 melee dice and must reroll all successful melee checks. So really, she is there to just go and hunt and kill heroes. A little trick or strategy that you should probably consider with her, again, it does kind of raise her overall cost, is buying like an extra hero or 2. Keep them super cheap, and basically just make sure that they are maybe as defensive as possible, or some other way support her. But basically, they're there to sort of like buff her up and give her extra melee dice. They're not there to necessarily fight themselves. And the more work you can let her do, she should really just kind of like slice and dice through whatever she's facing. And again, she also hurts the enemy heroes too. So really, if you're taking a hero up against her, I think really just need to be at a ridiculously high level and somehow kitted out to deal with her. And I just don't know how you would necessarily survive her for long. She is just ridiculously strong. So on her talent side, so Divine Luck will give her a reroll for the game, and then she has a couple of abilities that buff her range attacks too, which is really cool. So Eye of the Hawk basically is basically -1 to the opponent's armor if they're forced to take a check there from the bow attack. And then skipping just a little bit to Precision Shot. So basically she can shoot enemies in combat and can pick out heroes in a unit. So you can't even really hide your heroes from her. She can, if she wants to, put the work in to start picking off some of your heroes. So unless they have super good armor or anything, she definitely has a good chance of whittling down your heroes. But ideally, she's not doing too much of that. Really, she needs to be getting into combat where she is just excellent. So she has Heroic Rush as well. So once per game, she gets 3 actions, which is really should give most opposing players pause. If she's fighting 3 melee actions, there's a whole lot of your stuff dying. She's got Inspire, so friends within 12 reroll Will to Fight. And here's where she gets ridiculously good. So she's got 2 swords, so she's basically doing the dual weapon fighting. Lethal Blade basically makes her sword attacks lethal -2, so basically -2 to your armor save. And her being a hero, she can remove multiple models with single attacks. So that should really scare the bejesus out of most opponents. She's also got Rain of Blades and Storm of Blades. We'll come to those in a second, but she's also got Wall of Iron, which basically means she has +1 parry with a sword, and unless I'm mistaken, that should apply to each sword. We'll definitely have to double check that, but theoretically she has 2 parries in close combat on top of everything else. So, and again, going back to her Emasculator rule there, so you're going to be re-rolling all your successful melee checks against her anyway. Yeah, just ridiculously good. All right, Rain of Blades, basically, so when she's using dual weapons, she gains 2 bonus melee dice, and that's before even the Emasculator thing kicks in. So we'll have to double check and see how that works, because for the Storm of Blades ability, which we'll cover next. But basically, you really won't be using Rain of Blades much, but it's part of the tech tree of the talents. So what you're going to be using is Storm of Blades, and basically, again, when you're fighting with dual weapons, you actually just double your melee dice. So the question is, do you double your melee dice and then add in Emasculator dice on top of that, or do you add those in first and then double it? So we'll definitely follow that up in another video once we cover all those talents and stuff like that. But that is just a horrendous ability, and makes her just ridiculous, even more ridiculously strong. So just at a minimum, if we take it as she doubles her base attacks, she's going up to 6 dice. So again, just ridiculous. And then if you got a bunch of heroes, couple heroes of your own to buff her up, let's say those add on, and then she's fighting an enemy hero. So she's going to be in the 8 to 10 dice range at lethal 2 with parries, and you're going to be re-rolling what you your successes against her. There's not much that stands up to that. And hell, even if she's just fighting a regular unit, she's going to be causing significant casualties on her own. So uses for her, I mean, she probably don't want to leave her by herself. Because again, just that leather armor is not going to keep her alive long from ranged attacks. She doesn't really have anything to save herself from that. But if she's leading immortals or is around those, or like a souped up levy unit, again with maybe a hero or two of support next to her, maybe even one that can act like a bodyguard or something for her, she's just pure death. So about the only way to deal with her is either to try and ignore her and maybe force her into non-essential parts of the battlefield, or somehow deal with her at range, or ideally don't bring any heroes near her. Your heroes are just going to die, and somehow maybe you need to win the fight in close combat with her. But again, considering everything she does, you're going to be losing your own guys too. So Artemisia, just a simple badass. Really, there's only, I think, really one hero that really is even better than her, which we'll cover when we get to the Spartans. That's Leonidas. But yeah, she's a level 8 infantry hero and just absolute badass. So that's been our video on the Persians. Hope you guys like that. And if you give us a like, that'd be great. And subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more SPQR content.